Hello everyone, it's Nina and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing a full reading vlog dedicated to House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. This is one of the probably most famous or infamous horror novels of all time. It was originally posted online in 2000, but has since had a couple different physical releases. This is probably the most common version that is available now, which is the full color remastered version. There's a lot going on with the story of this book, but basically the main storyline follows a man named Will Davidson, who when he moves with his family into a new house, discovers their house is slightly larger on the inside, and out of nowhere a strange doorway opens up in their house that leads down to a never-ending hallway. And basically through repeated expeditions into this hallway, it causes a lot of trauma and issue for their family and their friends. This novel is also part of a very niche genre called ergodic literature, which basically means it's a book that has multiple different pathways for you to read. A common example would be like those choose your own adventure books that you probably had as a kid. This novel has a main story, but there's also kind of a side story that's being told through the footnotes, as well as multiple appendices that you can choose to read when they're referenced in the text, or save them until the end when you've read through the main story. I think because of all those things, it does seem a little bit complicated and a little bit hard for some people to first get into. But I figured now, with the spooky season, this is like the perfect time to read this book. Actually, 2 years ago, I got this book when we went to visit Salem, Massachusetts. Also during the fall time, so it just overall feels like now is the perfect time for me to read it. I will be talking about spoilers throughout this reading vlog, just because there are a lot of themes that I feel like I need to discuss, things that happen later on in the book to kind of explain them more fully. But I'm obviously not going to talk about every single thing that happens in this book. Anyway, with that long intro out of the way, let's get into the reading vlog. So I wanted to give you my first reading update in reading House of Leaves. So far, I am about to start chapter 8, so I'm about 100 pages in. Also, so far, I've actually been listening to a fan audiobook that is on YouTube, which is both 1, very good, and 2, not done yet. The creator is still like actively working on it. I actually don't think, though, that I'm going to listen to the audiobook for much further, because I do feel like there is eventually a part where it switches over to being like a book that needs a physical reading experience. But the audiobook definitely was a really great like kick in the butt to get me started. I feel like this is a book where I did know what happens in very like vague terms, but not really like the nitty-gritty of the story. And this is a very dense text in terms of like how it's written, as well as like the themes and the overall story structure. So I feel like you do need some prior knowledge to act as like almost like a scaffolding when you start, so you won't be like, what the fuck is this? It's kind of like with The Secret History. If the first line was not about Bunny's death, you need to maybe like see where you're going in order to understand all of the surrounding details. But let me try and give like a rough summary of what is going on in this book. First of all, this is an incredibly famous and influential horror novel, and effectively there are 3 stories going on. The first one is this guy named Zappano, who is describing a documentary called The Davidson Record that is about this guy named Will Davidson, who bought this house, had his family move in, and then very quickly they find a door in their house that was not there the previous time they checked, and they also find out that their house is very slightly larger on the inside than it is on the outside, and it just kind of like leads to their family being pulled into like the mystery of what is going on with the house and kind of how it's fracturing their family structure. So the second layer is the world that the Davidson Record takes place in, which is the world of the supposed documentary. And the third layer is the fact that Zappano has died, and his book is now being edited by both a team of editors, but also this guy named Johnny Truant, who will often add his own like personal narrative side stories as footnotes to Zappano's text. One thing I think that you need to know to make the reading experience better overall is that Zappano's work is supposed to be a pastiche of academic writing. And it's very much critiquing that overly detailed, dry academic writing style. Like, there is an entire page that is just one citation that's filled of like 50 people's names, which is probably accurate to a real journal article that exists, but it's just kind of like a parody of how some academics will be so aggressive with their citations, to the point where you kind of lose focus on what the original point they were trying to make even is. And this is something that's commented on in the novel, and is also something that I feel like makes sense with the story that's being told. Overall, I'm actually having a lot of fun reading this so far. The audiobook performance is also really good, so I'm kind of sad that I'm going to have to leave it soon to read it as a physical book only, but I'm sure it definitely will be worth it. If I didn't mention this in the intro, I'm also going to do this as a spoiler vlog, so in my next update, I'll talk a little bit more about my thoughts about like the themes, plot stuff, and other elements that I really like in this book. Also, if you're wondering, I have 2 bookmarks because one of them is actually my wife's. She tried to read this book like 2 years ago, but ended up putting it down. but I'm trying to encourage her, now that there's the fan audiobook version, for her to start over so that she can talk about it with me. But yes, I think I'm about to overtake the original position that she was at when she tried to read this book. So that's all for me right now, and I will see you in the next update. I've been trying to film this video for the last hour, but they keep doing yard work outside. But I'm not going to wait any longer. If it ends up getting loud, I'll just try and do some noise reduction in post. But I want to give you an update on my reading progress for House of Leaves. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the fact that this book is a pastiche of academic writing, and the fact that a lot of people really find it hard to first get into the book because of how dense the writing can be. I wanted to mention the fact that Johnny literally makes mention of how overly wordy Zappano's writing style is, and to us as the reader, he basically says he doesn't have the heart to edit out any of thing because these are basically Zappano's last words. And if we find it annoying, then we can just skip it, which I think is funny, just how much Johnny talks to the reader. And through him, we're seeing the commentary of kind of the self-awareness of the writing style being somewhat difficult to get into. At the same time, though, I do feel like the writing style gets easier as the book goes on. It's very overly detailed in the first couple chapters, but I think it gets a little bit more palatable as the book goes on. Another thing I wanted to talk about was about Johnny. I feel like I've heard a lot of people say they don't like him, or at the very least, Johnny was pitched to me as being a very gross, misogynistic man. And I don't really know what people are talking about. Yes, Johnny is very messy, and he's also kind of a player. But it really feels like he is often the passive one in the interactions he has with girls where they're the ones that initiate things with him. And there's also a couple instances where Johnny is just so fucked up from everything that's been going on with him, he can't really even enjoy it. And I feel like for the most part his narration is pretty funny. He's got a very dry humor delivery, which I really like. Probably one of my favorite things in the book is how the book itself is a threatening force. This book that we are holding in our hands, in the canon of the work, is a book that was written by Zappano that was then edited by Johnny. And as we learn from Zappano's death and also Johnny's descent into madness, these are both things that are a result of reading this book. And Johnny even warns us early on that there is something out to get him and in turn us for reading the book. I think that's part of why this is such effective horror, because it turns the reader into a character that can be affected by the narrative of the book. One last thing, I don't know if we want to talk about it too much yet, but I am so obsessed with the secret antagonist of the story. I love the concept of the Minotaur. I love that it's a force so strong that Zappano can't even talk about it and he strikes through any mention of it. I wanted to talk about one thing I saw on Reddit because the House of Leaves subreddit community got to be one of my favorite genders. It was a post talking about the fact that in the index of the book, when you look up Minotaur, it says the first mention of Minotaur is on page 4. Which is the part where they first mention the hallway and the entrance to the Labyrinth, but it never mentions Minotaur on the actual page, and it's just bitch, it was there the whole time, just hiding! Anyway, I think it's so cool, and I can't wait to do more analysis and just see how this character is portrayed in the rest of the book. At the part I'm at right now, we have gotten a little bit more of the weird formatting stuff. I really like some of the spread out weirdness that happens in some of the chapters. I feel like it's all very deliberate. I feel like the mostly empty pages are showing the very slow process of Davidson and Reston going into the Labyrinth. And then the part where the words are scattered across the page is kind of showing how the bullet is shattering the wood from being shot at. It's so cool and I really love it. Anyway, I've made a lot of progress so far. I'm over halfway now. And this section all right here is all of the appendix stuff. So not including this, I basically have a third of the book left in terms of the actual story. But obviously the appendices have so much other content in them. I still haven't read any of the letters from Johnny's mom to him. I'm just going to go through the book for right now in the actual page order in terms of reading. But that is going to be my update for right now, and I'll let you know how more of my reading goes later.
Are you gonna film?
So it's been one day since I last updated you, but I have made more progress in the book. I'm currently at page 353, so that is the start of chapter 15. I don't remember if I said what page number I was at yesterday, but I think I've probably read like maybe like a chapter or a chapter and a half since then. I got to the scene where the house starts like controlling and getting super fucked up when they tried to leave. And that part was really like shocking and scary. I feel like some of it comes from the fact that you're sort of lulled into a false sense of security, thinking that the weirdness of the house is only on the other side of the door leading to the labyrinth. But then it's like, bitch, you thought we are going to turn this whole house into like a big funhouse mirror and just like completely warp reality to stop you from trying to leave. In that scene, Tom's death was definitely the most shocking because with Holloway, they do kind of mention that he's like there and gone the next. But at least for me, I feel like it maybe was implied to be maybe some type of issue going on with his filming equipment. And the way that the house will kill people is something that was only going to be seen off screen. But it's like with Tom, he's there and then in the next second, he's literally being like eviscerated out of existence. It's both like gross in its brutality and just like overall very scary. And I feel like the fact that it all happened outside of the hallway leading to the labyrinth is definitely not good. At the section I'm at right now, Davidson is back at the house. Him and Karen are separated both emotionally and physically, and I really don't know what is going to happen. I'm pretty sure at this point, like, Tom is dead, so it's not really like Davidson is there to do any sort of like rescue mission for him. I don't know if now it's because he's seen like the potential of what the house can do, that he kind of has like a personal vendetta against it, that he's trying to sort of unravel the mystery to prevent anyone else from getting hurt. Or just kind of like the danger and allure of the house is making him go back for his own personal reasons. But that has been my update so far. I'm still really enjoying this. I'm going to try and make more progress on this probably later today, but I probably won't have time to update you until like the end of the week. And maybe if we're lucky, I might even have this book completely done by then. So that's all for me right now, and I'll see you in the next update. So I've now finished House of Leaves, and I wanted to give my final wrap up for this book. Definitely my initial thoughts with finishing it is that I'm a little bit still quite confused with everything going on with Johnny. To kind of explain my pathway through this book, I ended up not reading the appendices until I was done with the entire main section. I think it's in chapter 5, there is a footnote from the editors that says if you want to learn more about Johnny's backstory, you can read the appendices that include all the letters from his mother. But it also says if you want to form your own conclusion, you can skip that appendix for right now. And I just decided to skip the appendix. And I do think it colored my experience of reading Johnny's sections a little bit differently than if I would have read the letters from his mother earlier on. Basically, Johnny turns into an even more unreliable narrator for his last section of the book. And I think going into this, I knew that he was obviously having like delusions and becoming fearful of something that wasn't actually there to get him. But I figured that was kind of more of the effects of the Minotaur and sort of the way that the book itself and interacting with the story of the Davidson record kind of makes people that read it go crazy. But after reading the letters from his mom, it definitely seems more like a familial, like genetic mental illness that is being passed down that way as opposed to something that's coming from the book itself. Or maybe it's more of the combination of the two interacting together. But yeah, I think it is very open-ended in terms of like how this book eventually is like formed. Because I feel like earlier on when you see a lot of the letters from the editors, it kind of makes it seem like Johnny is interacting with them and he is the one that created the story. But then at the end, it seems like he burned all of Zappano's writings. And we do know he has gone missing at some point. Email from one of his like former lovers in an earlier footnote, but it's not really clear like what the full timeline of like the book's creation is. So that was just one thing that was a little bit confusing to me. The overall reading experience definitely was something that I feel like now I have to like read it at least like 2 or 3 more times to get the full story. There are definitely themes that I had picked out early on that I definitely made a lot of note for, but there definitely were other themes that I didn't really pick up on until like the second or third time they were mentioned. One thing is that Zappano uses a lot of like historical references, and there's also a lot of references both in Zappano's footnotes as well as with Johnny's stories that take place on water or like ship-based tragedies. I definitely want to go through and mark a lot of those because it's definitely not a theme or subject matter I feel like I would necessarily associate with this story. So I definitely want to go back and read through some of the earlier sections again in the future and definitely re-tab and add more of the thoughts that I have. Here's what my current tabbing system looks like. I don't know if it's showing up super well on camera. Also early on I do have a couple full like post-it notes of some of my thoughts. There's definitely also some other things I feel like I'm going to have to look at forums and the subreddit for House of Leaves to fully understand. There's definitely a lot of the like read struck through text references that I don't understand, so I'd love to see other people's interpretations of them. But yes, overall I really enjoyed this book. I wasn't sure in the beginning if I was going to give it like a 4 stars or a 5 stars. I definitely don't think it's like a new favorite. I think if I read this a couple more times and was able to pick everything out of it and was able to more fully understand the story, it would be a 5 star. So I think probably right now it's going to land somewhere at a 4.5 star. But I think the physical reading experience, although there are quite a few dense chapters early on, the effect later on with all of the very creative page design is definitely worth it and definitely helps elevate the scary factor of the book. So that is going to be it for this vlog. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you've read House of Leaves and some of your interpretations in the comment section down below. Please consider also liking this video or subscribing if you aren't already. For a small channel like mine, it means the world to me whenever I've gotten a new subscriber. That is going to be it for this video. Thank you guys, as always, so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!